Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend.
That I will support and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
Now that we've gone through the three largest characteristic traits of a company, what industry is it in, what size is it, and then also the ownership. These are the primary ones. We're going to go through a few more secondary considerations, and then with that, we'll walk through some examples of how Billy has experienced these things, and not necessarily highs and lows. I think left and right. These are the left and right lateral limits of your opportunities and how companies are going to fit into this multifaceted, multi-point being that you'll go into a relationship with as working for them. Billy, walk us through these next. I think we have like 7 of them here that we'll go through, and then we'll give some examples about how this influenced our decisions and helped us change what we thought we were going to do, pivot, and recognize that's what I want to go after.
Another way that you can think about these things is the synergy of the industry, the size of the company, and the ownership really affects a lot of the things that we're about to talk about. Big company in tech that's publicly owned, that's going to have a lot of the way that these qualities manifest are very different from the company that you work for right now. Just think about that, and we'll talk about that as we go into it. The first one is going to be education infrastructure. All this means is, what are the support systems in place for you as an employee? What kind of opportunities do you have to grow and learn? And there's 2 types of education, really. There's training that they provide you, and then there's on-the-job training, experiential training, that kind of thing. I'll give my experience, then Buster will give his experience with this. So for me, Amazon has all of the money, so I can take basically any training from a course perspective that I want. If I want to learn about something in the cloud, I will most likely be able to get it comped to me. In terms of infrastructure, there's a vast web of support systems in place for me because the company's been around for a long time. But from an OJT education perspective, I'm doing a job. As a consultant, it's a little bit different because I'm bouncing from project to project, but that's the only work that I'm doing. No one's ever going to come down to me and be like, Billy, we don't have a finance guy. You need to do finance now. And then I'm doing finance and consulting. Like that's literally impossible at Amazon. And so my OJT is going to be more narrow. My education opportunities are going to be broad from a formal education, and my infrastructure is going to be great. And that's because I'm working for a big company that's in tech. Tech has a ton of money right now.
Your infrastructure is going to be very clear.
Yes.
Very clear.
Because all the processes are already in place. Someone has asked the question before, I guarantee it.
And so with my first role out of the Marine Corps, I went to Korn Ferry, which is a publicly traded talent consulting firm, right? They want to be the center of human consulting. $2.5 billion company. It did not have the educational infrastructure in the same way that Amazon does as far as training all of their consultants and associates. And so that experience was, I was eligible to receive tuition assistance after 6 months of employment, and it was just a few $1,000s. It was fantastic, but Korn Ferry wasn't the company to grow young talent into being excellent. Really a place for talent to go to after they had been very successful. So I learned a lot of on-the-job training with the partner that I worked with. I was very grateful for all of that work that he did with me. When it comes to the infrastructure aspect of things, now I went from the large company to a small private consulting firm. And that infrastructure went from being this large pool of researchers I could tap into and say, hey, I need this work pulled out for this project, to you have one research consultant. Or how are we going to do this? You need to talk to that person in Korn Ferry. And then now at Rains is the firm I went to after that. You need to go figure it out yourself. And so they were growing, and they're a much larger company than the one I'm at today. Even so, in startup in many ways, where we're building as we go. We're building this aircraft as we fly, as they say. And so this is something to check in your company that you think you want to step into. I would recommend for the individual stepping out of the military, their path is different for everyone. Here's like full opinion, is that there's a lot to learn. And there's a lot of value that you can gain from going to an organization that has high structure and a high propensity for education. I would not be as valuable to the startup I'm with today if I came straight out of the military. I wouldn't have known how all these things worked. I had a chance to learn a lot over those 3 years when I was a consultant.
Yeah.
So that's the infrastructure and education aspect. The next one that we want to think about is name recognition, right? As we talked about in the last section, it's okay to have a misstep, right? Or to go into the role and then decide you don't want to be there. But name recognition can go a
Helps.
long ways. Think about what you saying, like, I serve in the Navy does. Air Force, Marine Corps, Army, Coast Guard, whichever. Same thing with law enforcement. I currently do this. That name recognition opens
Matters.
doors for you. It
Yep.
opens doors. And so as you think about the first role that you step into after you transition, there can be a lot of value of moving to a company that has high recognition, because then you will be associated with the excellence of that organization.
Yep.
When I hear that Billy was in the Air Force, I have all these assumptions about what that means about the Air Force. Now, in a professional capacity, that's they know how to manage great assets, and they have leadership traits and all the rest. Same thing when it comes to your company. If you go to a company like AWS, you go to a company in the space that you want to go to that's recognized, you'll figure out who these are. There can be a lot of value that brings agility to your career after that. Do you have anything you want to share about name recognition?
I can really only speak to the industry that I'm in, which is tech. But if you end up working for, used to be called Fang, then Facebook went and messed it up, and now it's Mang, and it sounds way less cool.
What is Fang?
Oh man, Meta, Amazon, Netflix, Google.
You missed the other A, which is Apple.
Apple. Thank
F
you.
and G.
And I don't even know if Netflix is really in
And
there
those
anymore.
it's a classification of stocks that they put together just to say these are the primary large tech companies.
Yep. So if you can get a job working tech for one of these companies, when you leave, you can really just bounce into another one of the FANG companies, or most commercial or SMB companies are going to want to hire you, because they're, even if you're not the greatest, there's a perception that you are, because most of these companies have a more rigorous hiring process. And so you've cleared the bar. Somehow you made it through one of these rigorous processes, so it almost validates you. Great advice that I got from someone when I was radically collaborating and figuring out how to get out was, if you're going to a startup or a small company and you leave, then you have to validate yourself to whoever you're going to next. If you get in with Cisco, Palo Alto, AWS, Microsoft, and these are just all large cybersecurity like firms or have a large cybersecurity presences, you don't really have to do that again. And so for me, when one of my primary goals was a frictionless transition process, as my wife PCS is from base to base, I needed a company that Amazon just lets me move, so I don't need to leave. But if I chose to leave, my level of friction going from Amazon into a new company is much lower than if I had started in a small company and was going from small to big or small to small.
And the same thing can be heard, or you can feel when someone says, let's say for those that went to college, what college you go to. There's all these, it's called credentialism. Oh, you went to Harvard, Stanford. You just choose a fancy school you've heard of. You're like, oh, they must be smart. Whatever you can think of where you hear and you go, oh, they must be excellent. That's what name recognition does. It's the credentialism of the expectation of future performance. Okay, next we have here is expectations and performance metrics. Expectations and performance metrics can come down to your KPIs, right? That's what it'll come down to, is your key performance indicators. And the different roles that you have different KPIs, like what matters when it comes to sales. In certain portions of that, it's like how many qualified meetings can you set? How much volume or how much value in the sales funnel can you close? These metrics are going to influence your life. Those will be your new goals on what you have to perform to. In the military, these are hard sometimes because it's like, do a good job. So you have your fit rep that says, do they do a good job, or do they do an awesome job, or do they suck? And that's like it. And there's not these numbers that come out of it. And what's going to happen, and for most companies, at the larger enterprise side and the commercial size, they're going to have very tight, they should have tight KPIs, and those will be assigned to you to have performance metric boards.
And in a larger business or a business that's publicly traded, so they're pretty established at this point, they have very clear KPIs, because you're not going to be the first person in this role. While in Buster's case, in a startup, you might be the first person in that role. You might be working directly for the CEO or someone in the C-suite, and you're just figuring it out.
And so you're figuring it out, but you develop these in the same way you create goals for the quarter or for yourself. What matters is, and you talk to folks, right? When you're doing this exploration and speaking with people, ask them what causes them to get promoted. That's a great, what are your KPIs, you could say, or what helps you to get promoted? And they'll share, oh, it's this and this. And that's what you then need to tuck away and recognize. In this type of role, this is what is expected of me. So figure that out and do that in your discovery process. Our next one here is understanding the military. And so in understanding the military, larger organizations have the cash on hand to have dedicated military subgroups.
They had the time and money to care.
They have the time and money to care. Some organizations don't care as much.
And not on them, they just don't have the time or the resources to care.
They can't care.
Yep.
Because it would take too much away from them staying afloat and staying in a place that's generating enough revenue to keep the lights on, as they say. So check that out. There's a lot of pros and guidance in a career that can come from an organization that has a very strong military organization inside of it. When you're on LinkedIn, you can check out whatever company you want, military recruiter. If they have one, it's a good indicator that there's a great military program, and you'll be plugged into a network. That's something to think about and to explore.
The last piece why I believe that this is important is if they do have a robust military affairs program, you're going to be talking to people who get where you're coming from. We both highly recommend that you get very good at discussing your experience from a military agnostic perspective, which we'll talk about later, but applying to a company or interacting with a company that has a strong military affairs organization gives you a little bit more leeway to grow into that ability to communicate agnostically instead of just having to like whitewash it. Because you might talk to a startup of 5 people and none of them have even like sniffed the military.
Yeah.
And they're like, so like, you're in the Air Force, you like fly planes, and then you have to do a lot of description versus this just makes it a lot easier.
The next thing we think about is benefits. Benefits as far as healthcare benefits, education benefits, maternity leave benefits. Some organizations are very robust and they'll say, here's our benefits package, and they'll send you a sheet of paper. Most companies have this formalized because they know what they're offering compared to what they're not offering. But this has large fluctuations in the industry, in different industries and different companies. Some of them have unlimited time off, and some of them have time off that's earned and accrued, just like you experience in the military. Now, even if there's unlimited time off, culturally, some organizations are very liberal with it, like taking time off all the time. And culturally, some organizations with unlimited time off,
they're like, what are you doing?
Don't take time off.
Not at all.
Okay. And they have absorbed this idea of like, you don't take time off unless your grandma's died, something like this. So look into the benefits, understand what they are, and then also understand what your family needs. I mean, what are the needs of your family, the requirements there, because that can have a lot of influence over what you do. If you have a large family, being with a large organization in large insurance plans and big, large group plans, what's called, can bring a lot of benefits to your family that you might not see in a very small organization because they don't have the infrastructure to provide all of those things. I even remember when I was at Korn Ferry, there were benefits around adoption, about conception and helping out with that for marriages. And in my current company as a startup, we certainly don't have the ability to offer unique things like that. So maybe figure out, talk with your family and your personal needs about what you think you want on a benefit side, understand where those fit in, and then that can start to shape out your process too. Okay, Billy, this next one, hit us with it.
Yeah, the next piece is going to be remote or geographic considerations. This is a big hot topic now post-COVID. And this really comes down a lot to industry, I would say, more than anything. Certain industries, you can't work remotely.
No.
Other industries, you can.
Yeah, if you're a carpenter, if you're a roofer, like, you're on roofs.
Yeah, you're on roofs. If you work for Tesla, you work in the Gigafactory. Like, that's kind of it.
Culturally, yeah.
Culturally, yeah. And so be aware of that, and also understand, like, if you're a team-oriented person, maybe remote might not be the best thing for you. It sounds nice, but feel that out. Make sure you talk to people about what that looks like, because I'm a remote worker. It works great for me and my lifestyle, but understand that, like, remote work is lonely, and you have to deal with that. Yeah. No, you hated it. You got your own office. You got an office in a WeWork so that you could be around people.
Yeah. So working at my home, in my home situation, wasn't great. We didn't have my wife works also, so we didn't have 2 work stations in our home. And also I liked to segment my life. I liked transitioning to the office and then back to home. And that was a personal thing for me. And then also when I was in the office, I liked collaborating with people I had a common goal with. And so I even had a WeWork office, and then I made friends with the folks there, but everyone I worked with wasn't there. And sometimes I would, like, this is crazy, but like I would take a break and just walk around to take a break because I had no one to go mess around with. So I really didn't like that. And so I've already shared how I went from consulting to operator, but then also what came along with that for the specific operation role I was moving into was going into the office, which is not a standard thing for startup. It's not standard for anything when it comes to industry, for components of industries. That was a part of my discovery of self, of what I liked, what was good for me and good for my family, and all of the things that I came to recognize later on in my why and who I was, the best of me, the worst of me. That was really important to experience. And so as you're looking at these things, remote just sounds awesome. If you're in the military, I feel comfortable in saying you've never been a remote employee.
Never.
You've never been remote. You've always had formation to go to. You had PT to go to. You've lived with someone. You've always been around someone. You've never been alone. And so I would just provide caution in saying, like, finally, I'm going to be remote and I'm out of here. But it's caution as in pressure tested, right?
Yeah.
Is this something you really want to do? And it's okay to try it out and give it a shot.
Take the time to prototype those ideas and make sure you're talking to people about it, because certain companies also have different perspectives on remote work versus people in the office. Some are fine with it. Others, like, you can do it, but grudgingly. And other companies have very strict work from home policies where you have to come in a certain amount of days.
Yeah, the hybrid.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to just be aware of that and don't just expect it to be one way or the other, and it can change.
And these trends will change too. COVID came, everyone pushed remote. It's awesome. Everyone has to go remote. And now industry leaders are recognizing that productivity has dropped from their people, and they're calling everyone back. And so then there's some people like kicking and screaming about, like, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, you're coming back, or you can go find a new job. And that's kind of like what Elon did. And that's what you can do when you lead your company, which could be a company of 2 or 1 or thousands. The last important component to recognize when you're thinking about organizations and where you're going to fit in is the career development opportunities. And so I think you have a great perspective on what those might be and to look out for.
So in like larger companies, when you get hired in to a specific role, there is already a career development path in place for you. So for me, in AWS, I have a defined career path as a security consultant. And it takes more effort for me to lateral into another position in AWS, or I would have to leave the company, convince somebody that I'm not worthy, but of moving into another job where I don't have any experience, sell them on it, and then probably get hired into a more junior position just so that I can go into this new
So the example
thing.
is you going from cybersecurity to marketing.
I would say even less than that, me staying in cybersecurity and going from consultant to sales. Still same industry, different role,
Different function.
different function. Or same role, different industry. Both would be equally hard to like convince someone that I am ready to go in either case. So just understand, if you're going into a big company, you're more locked into that career track for sure. If you're in a smaller company, there is more, almost like, simply because they need people to do work, there is more chances for you to say, oh, I'm doing this, but I can start like glomming up more and more things to do until your role doesn't really look like what it would look like anywhere else, because you're just absorbing responsibilities.
Large organizations have had the time to
Yep.
do career mapping, and they'll sometimes have full HR departments to map out the full careers
Yeah.
of everyone, to then provide that to those employees to show, here's your map. And so Billy at AWS will have something that's very similar to the military, of you'll experience something between 3 to 5 years here, and then you'll go 3 to 5 years here, And you go to this course and do that in 3 to 5 years
Yeah.
there, and you move up from L4 to L5 to an L6
Mm.
and then 7 and then whatever. These are ranks inside of big companies. They have ranks that match with pay bands. Whereas conversely, like where I am right now is, hey, we need someone to build a partner program. Wayne,
Yeah.
can you do it?
And
You
if
know, it's
you're-
like, yeah,
If you're a chief
well,
of staff in a large company, that's not what you're doing.
most likely you're not doing that.
Yeah.
You'll be more guiding the excellence and op tempo of that executive staff. Look, there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to this. And so there's you to think about, there's what you do, and then there's who you do it for. And so again, in going through the who you do it for, here are some of those basic ones. Again, from the top is the industry, the size of the company, the ownership. So those are the 3 primary ones that have the greatest influence. And then subcomponents behind that, which we've just gone over and I want to riddle them off again, is the education infrastructure, name recognition,
Yep.
the credentialism that comes with that, the shininess with certain names, expectations and performance metrics. How do you get promoted and how are you judged on your performance? Understanding of the military. Do they have time and do they know about you and how to help to groom you and change you from being the soldier, sailor, airman, marine, guardian that you are today into the next thing and civilianize you, or police officer, firefighter, whichever. The benefits, right? Which ones are important for you and your family? Which ones are of desire to have? Which ones are okay to not have? 401k is one that I didn't mention. Financial aspect of now saving for retirement if that's something that's important to you. Geographical constraints, whether that's remote or where you move.
Gotta live
Right,
somewhere.
you gotta live somewhere. And the last piece is the career development opportunities, that clear pipeline. Is it more like the Marine Corps or military, right? Or is it a guided and necessary choose your own adventure that
Yeah.
comes along with it? And the fluctuations that come in the rigidity of some sides and the fluidity on the other side, there's a balance for you. There is a right spot for you. And it's okay that you don't know it today, because I didn't know it when I got out exactly, and neither did Billy.
No.
And these are the things that we really urge you to do, to learn about and to ask advice about those that have done it before you, to learn so that way you can step into the best thing.
And the last piece that I really want to highlight is, I hope by now that you can see the mechanisms that we're using here to help funnel down your options. The first way that you start removing options from the board is by looking at yourself, because there's going to be clear things that are going to really just be removed from the board based off of an examination of who you are in your external and internal constraints. Then we talk about what you might want to do. And depending on what roles you want to focus on, that's going to take a wide variety of options off of the board. And then now we've gotten to who you want to do that thing for. And by the time you've really answered those 3 things, you have a couple of really concrete options. And that's the whole point of the discovery funnel. And now we're going to drop into the next and final piece, which is in block 5, which is how. You know what those, you've identified those specific opportunities. How might you position yourself for them? And that's where we're going to get to next. So we'll see you guys next time.